Hey, Falcons and NFL fans. Welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins with Chris Smitherman producing behind the scenes, Tom Pollen, and is this Bogey?
This is Bogey. Yep.
So I now recognize your cats. I'm Dave Holcomb. We got a great show again for you today. We're talking NFL schedule release. We're going to break down the Falcons schedule for a big portion of today's show. Also talk about some of the big primetime matchups, of course, some of the scheduling changes in the NFL this season, more flexing of games. You have the Black Friday game now. So we're going to talk all about the upcoming 2023 NFL schedule. And I think towards the end of the show, Tom, we'll have some, news and notes maybe from Falcons rookie minicamp, which started this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Red Stallions are in their first minicamp of the year. And if anybody's wondering about my reference there, find the Titans schedule release video. Seriously, you have got to watch that. It is hilarious. So
I could have set the over-under of how quickly you would call the Falcons the Red Stallions today. And there would have been a very low over-under because I figured it was going to happen immediately, and it did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can't avoid that. That was just great. I loved it. Red Stallions.
Yeah.
Find that video. You've got to see that. And the hell of it is the Titans play it straight. Because when the people look at the logo and misname the teams and screw everything up, they come up with the card and they use that name. And it's fun. I'm glad the Falcons actually had a sense of humor about it because their Twitter feed actually used Red Stallions at the top of their Twitter feed. It's, so it's great to see a team play along with it, too. I love it.
Yeah, listeners should go back and watch the video. But just for more point of reference, the Tennessee Titans were on Broadway in Nashville asking fans to name the team, and they just put up a logo to show. And it was a team logo of a team they were going to play this season. They kind of went through their schedule. And then that fan would name the team that they thought it was, and they would put it up on the screen who it actually was. Right. I don't think any of them got any right other than the Titans. They knew the Tennessee Titans at the end.
The Tennessee Titans, yes.
But, I think the closest right answer we got from any fan or any stranger on the street, I don't know if these were probably not NFL fans, was calling the Buccaneers the Pirates from the from the Caribbean or something. She had some
Pirates of the Caribbean or something. And then then they flashed the card with Pirates, of the Caribbean. And it's just you can't they won the schedule release. That's basically it. You can't do any better than that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and the fan that saw the Falcons logo called them the Red Stallions. So now we have the Falcons Twitter account has been renamed the Red Stallions. So yeah, pretty funny video. Definitely check that out. Also check out Prize Picks, our sponsor. When you get started after downloading the app, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So that gets you some free money, play money to get started in the app. And it's not quite football season yet, but we're getting there, Tom. A couple months away. And until then, you can place entries on playoff hockey, playoff basketball, and, of course, baseball season in full swing.
Yeah, baseball season. And they have NFL futures. So if you want to start playing some prop bets on the NFL season, what players are going to, over under on total passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, you can go there. You can do it right now. It's out there for you. So, and cricket. They got plenty of cricket now. It's cricket season.
Right.
So, yeah. So make sure that you get to them and matching your first $100 deposit. You can't beat that either.
We already got some comments coming in. That's great. Keep them coming. Todd asks, "Hey guys, question: Vegas has Falcons at 8.5 wins. I think that's way too high. What do you all think?" Todd, you are in the group with Colin Cowherd a couple of weeks ago. Did you see this, Tom?
No, I didn't.
Colin Cowherd was adamant that the safest bet you could make on an over/under win total for the NFL this year was the Falcons at 8.5.
I remember that. Yes, I do remember that.
And he went on for a while about how they definitely won't reach 9 wins. And it sounds like, Todd, you're feeling the same thing. I don't think it's definite. I think they have a shot at 9 wins. I wouldn't, if first of all, I'm not a betting man, so don't listen to what I say with betting. But if I was, I don't know. I would probably still go under, but I don't think it's a home run. I don't think it's a grand slam. Definite going to happen. I can see this team winning 9 wins, especially if you look at their schedule and the opponents they play.
Yeah, I mean, first thing is it's the 32nd based on last season records. If the number 32 strength of schedule out of all NFL teams this year. And that's not saying that this is a bad Falcons team, too. They've made a lot of significant improvements to this team.
Yeah.
One of the problems you have, though, is we don't know what we're going to get out of Desmond Ridder yet. But he does have the tools around him to succeed. If he doesn't succeed this year, you know Desmond Ridder isn't the guy.
And I think that was Cowherd's bulk of his argument, that you look at the other teams that were set at 8.5 wins. The Vikings were one of them, I believe. I don't have the list in front of me, but I believe the Vikings
I don't have the list.
And they, of course, have a better quarterback than Desmond Ridder. The Packers were another team that were set at 8.5, and I don't understand the Jordan Love, to be honest. But Colin Cowherd said, he's a quarterback that's been in the system for a while. He's going to be pretty good. He's going to be better than Desmond Ridder. I don't know if you can necessarily say that.
Based on what we've seen so far into Jordan Love, you can't make that prediction. You can't make that statement.
We've seen him in 1 or 2 games, and he's been bad. Like not even like bad, but showing promise. He's just been
right. No, he's just bad. And that's, everybody's looking at it that, Aaron Rodgers sat for 5 years behind Brett Favre. And that's what everybody's thinking. Well, now Jordan Love is sat for 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers. So, of course, he's going to be the Hall of Fame quarterback now. That doesn't translate. That doesn't – just because it worked, it happened that way for Aaron Rodgers doesn't mean it's going to be anywhere near that way for Jordan Love. But that's how everybody's looking at it. So, I don't get it because, and believe me, I've seen Jordan Love play football here in the NFC North.
Right, of course.
And I don't get it, but if everybody wants to look at it that way, fine. I'm there with you. Until they face the Bears week 1, you could think all you want about Love at quarterback.
Another one of those teams was the Steelers at 8.5 wins, and Cowherd felt a lot more confident about Kenny Pickett and the Steelers, which I think is fair. I feel more confident about the Steelers and the Falcons as well, but it's another quarterback that, I think he shows some promise as a rookie. I do think Pickett is going to be good, but that he doesn't have that much more experience than Desmond Ridder does, and I think Ridder is getting kind of hammered in the national media because of what Dave is saying here. When people think of Desmond Ridder, they think of a 3rd rounder. And I think that's true. And when they think of Jordan Love, they think of a former 1st rounder.
Right.
And Kenny Pickett was a 1st rounder. So they just kind of assume that, the teams that drafted those quarterbacks know what they're doing. And they drafted him in the 1st round because he was worthy of being a 1st round pick. And Ridder wasn't worthy of a 1st or 2nd round pick. So he's not any good. And that's just not how it actually
doesn't pan out that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes you miss. I think the Packers everybody at the time thought the Packers were ridiculous for reaching that far for Jordan Love. So, and now all of a sudden Jordan Love's the guy. Let him be the guy. But yeah, Desmond Ridder, just because he was a third round quarterback, doesn't mean he's not going to be an NFL talent. Doesn't mean he's not going to be able to lead an NFL team. As I say, he's got the intangibles. Now we're going to see what he can do as far as skills. I think he has the intangibles. The team likes to play for him. The team likes him in the huddle. He commands the huddle. So now let's see what he can do coming out in the field. And with Bijan Robinson, with the revamped wide receiver room, and see how he performs.
Gary had a funny comment about the Red Stallions. Yeah, it's kind of surprising. I think it's very clearly a bird logo. I don't know how that. She looked like a young girl, maybe 20 to 25 years old, and she got Red Stallions out of the Falcons logo. So yeah, I don't know.
I don't get it. But, oh man.
A couple other comments about Ridder. Desmond Ridder will be fine. It amazes me that all the people that are doubting him, mainstream media, but also a lot of Falcons fans, especially Falcons fans, that's not cool, Tony says. I think it's okay to doubt him, but I am ready to see what he can do. And I have my doubts as well, but I'm happy the Falcons are going all in on this is Ridder's team now, and this is Ridder's season, and that's the way it should have been. You're going to spend a third round pick on a quarterback.
Yeah,
it's kind of middle of the road, not expected to be a great guy. Maybe he'll be a career backup, but a third round pick, you can still get a quality starter at other positions. So if you pick a quarterback third round, I think unless he's going to play, you got to give him a chance to play, or that's a waste of a pick. And the Falcons are not wasting that pick by giving Ridder a shot this season.
Exactly, Dave. You have to use him. This is why you drafted him. You thought you were getting a guy in the third round that could actually take over this team. It's not that the Falcons thought, well, now it's the third round. Let's see if we can take a quarterback. Whoever's on the board, they, out of all the players on the board from any position, they thought that this guy was the best to take and that he would be capable of taking this team. So now we're going to get a chance to see it. And it's going to be an interesting year. If anything, it's going to be an interesting year for the Falcons to see how this progresses.
Well, we will see it being either living in Atlanta or owners of a subscription of NFL Plus.
Yeah.
But across the country, most people will not be seeing the Falcons a lot this year. This is our transition into the schedule release. I think the number one takeaway, and I did an article, Tom, on allfalcons.com. I've been writing for them the last month or so. Check out our Falcons content there. And I did an article yesterday, 5 takeaways from the Falcons schedule. And the number one takeaway, no primetime games. 13 games will be at 1 o'clock, probably on Fox, although that's a new thing as well, that there's no conference tie-in with networks anymore. It's going to be free for all. Who's on what channel, but no Falcons games in prime time to start the season. 13 games at 1 o'clock. They've got the 9:30 game in London, 1 West Coast trip where that game's going to be at 4 o'clock, and then 2 other games to be announced. Don't have a time yet, or a day actually, at end of the season games that could be moved around a bit. Were you shocked to see the Falcons not get a primetime game?
Yeah, a little bit. Because most teams do end up in primetime at some point during the season. But, excuse me. I think one of the problems is you got Amazon Prime now is taking over the Thursday night game. And Amazon Prime doesn't want any potential
out of a game,
non-impact games on their Thursday night schedule.
Yeah.
And the Falcons, as much as we believe they can be a better team this year, and I think is going to fight for a playoff position in the NFC South, they don't have a national impact right now. And Amazon Prime, it's the money. Money is talking.
Yeah.
Now that's what you get right here is the money talks. And Amazon Prime, for Thursday night, they want to at least have a chance at an impact game. which is why you got the Thursday flex. And then, which I'll go off on later. But,
Yeah.
But, and Monday or Sunday night, there's not really a big impact game. You could like to see the Falcons on a primetime game against like the Saints, a division rival, but that's not a national attention type game. So you're not going to get that. And there's not a lot of teams on this schedule that you could sell a Falcons game against in prime time. And that's all what prime time is about, is selling the storyline.
Yeah.
So
there are 4 teams that don't have a primetime game, and Tom already mentioned the Thursday flex. There's flex for Sunday night and Monday night now, so there will be a chance for the Falcons to get a primetime game.
Yeah.
But there are 4 teams entering this season that are not scheduled for a primetime game. The Falcons are one of them. The other ones are the Indianapolis Colts, Arizona Cardinals, and Houston Texans. And actually, the Falcons play those 3 teams. So I think under the old format where every team had to have a primetime game, you're probably getting Colts and Texans in primetime on Thursday night. And then some other point, you're probably getting Cardinals and Falcons in a battle of horses. If you're asking that girl on Broad Street in Nashville, really a battle of the birds. So
yes,
that's kind of how it worked. That's how it used to work, but we're not going to get that. And I guess maybe the negative of having an easy schedule is what you're saying, is that there are no marketable games because the Falcons are predicted to be a middle of the road team. And if they're playing a bunch of middle of the road or projected to be bad teams, it is kind of hard to market those games.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's too bad that we've gotten to the point where the NFL sells their television packages. I mean, a couple of years ago, the television package said you had to have every team in prime time at least once every season. It's not that way anymore. And it's unfortunate because you lose a chance to kind of show off. I know a lot of these games don't end up being much. And Zozo, you're going to weigh in on that? A lot of these games don't end up being much, but they still got a chance to at least have a primetime highlight. And that's just not going to be the case anymore. There's too much money involved. And too much money with companies that are throwing their weight around about what games they want. And the NFL's bending backwards to accommodate them.
I'm going to go back to Ritter being a 3rd-round pick because the first 2 games of the season, if obviously you're not going to put Falcons Panthers in a primetime game week 1, but if that game was a little bit later in September, that had potential because you've got Ritter against Bryce Young, you think, and the first time they face each other, maybe it's the first time in a long series like we saw with Matt Ryan and Drew Brees.
Right.
That's possible. And then the aforementioned Jordan Love is coming to Atlanta in week 2. And you have Love against Ritter, another young quarterback matchup that to a diehard NFL fan, I think has intrigue because of those young quarterback matchups. And maybe the NFL could have tried to sell that, but those are early season games on the Falcons schedule and probably too early to have in primetime.
Right. I think later on, when do they play the Panthers? They're playing in week 15. You never know. That one might get flexed into a primetime spot depending on how these teams perform. So, right. But week 1, I think week 1's a great storyline.
Right. Yes. So that's why I was saying, like earlier in the season, in case one of these teams isn't any good, you got that early in the season when they're both still alive. Week 15, who knows? Maybe Bryce Young is struggling, doesn't look like a franchise quarterback. Maybe Ritter is already kind of shown that he's not the guy. And then if you put that in primetime, there's not as much intrigue if it was a September match.
No, exactly.
But that's one you could circle and say, if these two are in the NFC South race and maybe the division's a little bit better than you thought and Ritter and Young are playing well, that is one that could potentially go into a primetime slot.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's always the possibilities. you're going to have to play your way into a primetime spot this year.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
And I think Arthur Smith will use that, and he should use that. And that I think it is quite disrespectful, and it's going to happen going forward that teams will not have primetime games.
Right.
But I think coaches should look at that and not ignore it. They should look at it and say, the NFL doesn't think we're going to be any good.
Right.
And if you're upset about not having a primetime game, then play your way into a primetime game. Prove to the league that we are a good team.
Right.
And that we deserve to have a spot in prime time in December. And I think that could be a motivating factor for young players.
Yeah, so do I. It should be. If it's not, then that's not a player you want on your team.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be.
Because, everybody loves playing in front of the lights,
right.
Prime time. I know most players don't like Thursday night football, and I get the reasons why. But for a young Falcons team, I think they would love a chance to play on Thursday now that they see that the NFL thinks that they're not worthy of a Thursday spot. So, yeah, I think they would love to earn a Thursday spot or a Monday night game later in the season.
Yeah, I agree. And, yeah, I think that is big motivation. And don't be surprised if that isn't mentioned quite a bit as the Falcons go through training camp and enter the season. So it's going to be an interesting storyline to see what the team makes of it. Or, because you go into camp and a lot of coaches like to play that line. They don't respect us. Let's make sure they respect us. Right.
There's two other main things I want to mention with the Falcons schedule, and we can analyze it further if you guys want to. But it's a odd number year, which means the NFC teams are going to have 8 home games and 9 road games now with this 17-year schedule. We're still kind of getting used to it a little bit because I know it's the third season, but it's only the second time now that the Falcons have had an odd number of or more road games than home games. Yeah. But even despite that lopsidedness, Tom, Atlanta has 2 home games at the beginning of the season to kick off. So now you're looking at, after those 2 games against the Panthers and Packers, starting in week 3, the last 15 games of the season, 9 of them are on the road. And you got a middle of the season where you play 3 times in Atlanta over like a 2-month span from late September to Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And then the end of the season, despite, I think Falcons fans are going to feel like if this team's barely been home, despite that, they're still going to have 2 road games at Chicago and at New Orleans to end the season. So, yeah, the opponents are easy. There's no easy games in the NFL, but, at least on paper and based on win percentage last year, the Falcons have some easy opponents. But after the first 2 weeks of the season, they're going to kind of be road warriors.
Yes, they are.
And be away from Mercedes-Benz Stadium a lot, like two-thirds of the weeks after week 2.
Yeah, right. Week 5 and 6 is their only 2-game stretch at home after the first 2 weeks of the season. Yeah. And it's weird how that's worked out. One of those is a really long road game. They're going to be traveling to London. Right. It'll be one of the London Jaguars are going to host them in a Sunday morning game. But and don't discount the London Jaguars yet. I know it's ridiculous, but apparently the Jaguars are going to be out of their stadium for renovations for 2 seasons. So it's going to be interesting to see how that ends up. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. But it's rough because and NFL players are creatures of habit. So, you like to, be able to, Saturday you go to the hotel, you have your team meetings, and, Sunday 1:00 football game. But, doing a lot of traveling like they're doing, it's going to be rough. And you got a cold weather game in Chicago. You have a potential cold weather game in New York against the Jets. It's not easy as far as travel and game conditions that you're looking at for the Falcons in 2023.
Well, that was going to be my last point about my last takeaway mentioned here is the London game, and we already knew they were going over, but that game at 9:30. I like the early Monday or the early morning London games, so that'll be cool to watch the Falcons before all the big lineup on Sunday that weekend. But no bye after the London trip.
No.
And that's that's been more popular for teams to do lately. I think they kind of went by the normal travel norms back when this first started, that, you definitely want your bye after going to Europe, and you come back and you're jet lagged and just tired from the trip, and you want some rest. And I think that is very warranted. And anybody who's been to Europe, I think, would know that it is warranted. I know the teams get to travel on nice airplanes and stretch out and walk around, and their flight's probably a lot faster than the average flight to Europe. But still, it's taxing on your body, and you play in a football game, and then you got to turn around and play a football game again the following week if you don't have a bye. And that's what the Falcons are going to try and do this season. I do like that their bye is after their West Coast trip. That kind of makes sense. I don't know if they had a say in that or not, but there's two big trips for the Falcons this year: the one to Europe and then the one to Arizona. They really don't have any other long flights, so it really does help that the layoff, the bye, is after the West Coast trip. But to get to the West Coast trip and have that nice bye later in the season, you're going to have to get through this September, October that we're talking about, where you're not playing many home games, and you got a trip to London, followed by the two of the three home games you have in October and November, but you're playing maybe a little bit tired.
Yeah. So it's a rough thing. I like the way the bye week is situated, though. I like that in week 11. I think it's a good time to have the bye.
Yeah.
Get some guys back, get people some rest, see what kind of injuries they have, and kind of get healthy a little bit for the stretch run of the season. I do like that. So, but yeah, it's going to be rough. It is taxing taking a long flight like that. I haven't traveled to Europe. I did take a trip to Hawaii once. That is a long flight, and it's very rough to cross that many time zones and not have time to adjust. So We'll see how they go. It's rough.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying it's a bad decision to not have the bye after the London trip, but it's just something we have to monitor. And it's an adversity that the team will have to go through. At least they do get two home games upon coming back. That's the positive. And I do like the bye after the West Coast trip. And a later bye is better than an early bye. I will say that over and over again. I always think the later you get your bye, the better.
Yeah, so do I. I like it. Just based on the rigors of the season. It's a long season. It's a tough season. So that's a great way to split it up. And, you go into your stretch run after a bye week, head into November, December. It's a good time to evaluate what you have, what you've done right, and kind of what you can do over the last stretch of the season.
Tony says, just look at the schedule and the quarterbacks they're going to be facing in the first 7 games. Yeah, you got Panthers, Packers, Lions, Jaguars, Texans, Commanders, Buccaneers. I think that's 7 games. Yes, that's the first 7 weeks of the season. So You got Bryce Young, Jordan Love. Jared Goff is an experienced quarterback, played really well at the end of last season.
Yes, he did.
And that should be a good offense. Trevor Lawrence, up-and-coming guy, but then, C.J. Stroud and is Sam Howell going to be the quarterback for Washington? That's who Tony predicts. And
it's tough to say right now. I don't know.
And Tampa Bay being Baker Mayfield right now is
Baker Mayfield
in Tampa Bay. So, that's very favorable schedule. very favorable because of the quarterbacks you face. But even after that, at Tennessee, Minnesota, at Arizona, Arizona, not very good team last year. Kyler Murray, I mean, maybe he bounces back. He was a down year for him last year. Kirk Cousins started so well at the beginning of last season, but that team kind of fell apart. So it's hard to know what you get out of the Vikings and the Titans, because the Titans fell apart at the end of last year too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Kirk Cousins, you don't really expect much from. I don't, but as long as he wants to stay in Minnesota, I'm fine with that. But you're catching Kirk Cousins during a time of the year when he's usually pretty good. You're not getting the Vikings later in the year when they're usually folding. So,
he did beat the Bears twice last year, though, didn't he?
All right.
Just saying.
The Bears were just bare bones football team last year. We're going to kick their butts this year.
Okay. I think that's fair. I think a lot of people are not expecting much from the Vikings. And kind of understand why. But they did win 13 games last year. So
yes, they did.
I wouldn't be surprised if they win 9-10 again and are involved. So
they'll be involved. The funny thing, though, is that everybody's predicting, and this is almost universal, that the Detroit Lions are going to take the NFC North. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see.
Well, we talked about at the beginning of the show. We don't really expect a lot from Jordan Love. We don't believe in him at this point. And if you're not on the Vikings bandwagon, I mean, are you predicting the upstart Bears to win the division? You got to go with the Lions.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, they had
somewhat by default.
They had a great second half of the season last year, almost made the playoffs, just barely lost out to Seattle for that last playoff spot.
Yeah.
And, well, I mean, the NFL kind of believes in them too. You're putting them in the Thursday night opener. If somehow you sold the NBC on having a Chiefs or Lions at Chiefs NFL opening kickoff. So
it's kind of surprising, but yeah, I mean, 2 top 5 scoring offenses last year, and a team that you said played so well down the stretch, just barely missed the playoffs, and people believe in them to be legit this year. Maybe not, I wouldn't call them a Super Bowl contender, but I think people are expecting a 9-10 win season, and that could be enough to be a division winner and host a playoff game. So, I think the hype is kind of warranted, at least at this point. And not only do you have them on the Thursday night opener, you got them in 5 primetime games.
Yeah.
Or 5 games that will be nationally televised. One of them is Thanksgiving at 12:30. So
they always get the Thanksgiving
prime time. But 5 nationally televised games at this point for the Lions, and 4 primetime games, and 3 on Thursday night. Talking about the different, well, again, not Thursday night, but 3 on Thursday. Again, talking about the differences in the NFL schedule this coming season. Used to be you could only play once on Thursday, unless you were playing. I think there were a couple exceptions where if you played on Thanksgiving, you might play the Thursday following, which you weren't playing on a short week. So you were only going to play in a short week on Thursday once. And that has changed. The Lions being the greatest example, they're going to play in a short week 3 times. Granted, 1 at the beginning of the season when they haven't played yet, and that'll help them overcome short schedules. But, man, the Lions have been handed a lot of primetime games, and you'll be able to watch your team nationally if you're a Lions fan, but kind of an inconvenience for the Lions players. The exact opposite of the Falcons, which we didn't really touch on, with them not having primetime games. You feel disrespected, but maybe it's an advantage because 1 o'clock. It's going to be symptomatic with the scheduling that the Falcons are going to be able to do.
As I say, players are creatures of habit. They like to have their regular week, your padded practice, a couple of your run-throughs, and Saturday you have your your team get together in the hotel, and you go Sunday, you play your noon game or 1:00 game, and then you're back home and you're getting ready for next week. Thursday night games really throw that off.
Right.
That is tough on a team to do Thursday night. Now they're asking teams to do Thursday night twice. The Bears are doing Thursday night twice this year.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear the NFL call themselves or sell this thing that they are all for player safety anymore, because Thursday night is not about player safety. It's a money grab. You're allowing Amazon to dictate your schedule, saying that you want to flex a game into Thursday night. Flexing a game into Thursday night, this is not flexing a game from Sunday afternoon to Sunday night. You're giving a player 3 less days to get ready for a game when they think they're playing on Sunday. Then all of a sudden you're telling them they got to play on Thursday night.
Yeah.
That's a rough week.
And you wonder why the quality of play on Thursday games is lower than a Sunday. Well, they're playing that you got less time to recoup from an injury, and coaches have less time to prepare
Right.
A game plan that might include some of the exciting schemed up offense that we're used to seeing on Sundays and Mondays.
Right. Coaches have to put in a game plan. They have to work on their game plan the same week that they're working toward their Sunday opponent.
Right. Yeah, because there's not enough time to put it in 3 days.
No. Then you have to give it to the players. You got to practice for you only get a couple of days to practice it before you have to, and you got to give the players a day off, because you'll beat their bodies to hell on Sunday. So they have to have some time to recover from that Sunday game. So you only really get 2 days to give your team the game plan for Thursday night's game. Yeah, it's not going to be good. And flexing a team into Thursday night, my God, I don't know what the criteria is, how much lead time you have to give a team before they know they're on a Thursday night game. But still, even if you give them a couple of weeks to look at it, it's a tough chore. It's going to be a challenge. And I don't like it. I think we're going to see more injuries because of it. I still think the jury's out as far as what an 18-week season's doing to NFL players, as far as injuries and as far as longevity. So it's going to be interesting to see how this affects players during the season. I hate it, but Amazon Prime demands it, and they are the ones paying the bills, and the NFL is going to bend over backwards for them. And it's funny, but the NFL has let TV networks make their decisions for a long time, and that's the way it's going to be going forward. It's just going to get worse the more money they pour into these products.
Now, I've been trying to double check if the NFL actually passed that proposal. I don't think they're flexing Thursday games this year.
Everything I read seems to say that they can flex the Thursday night game.
I haven't been. Could you send me an article? Because I haven't been able to. What I've found is that they've tabled that discussion, that it was discussed and they were thinking about voting on it, but they've kind of settled on a team can have a second Thursday game after playing on Sunday. That's the change, and that the flexing, I believe they're flexing Monday games, but not Thursday.
All right, because some of the things I was reading about the schedule said that they were flexing Thursday night games too, but I just looked it up online, and yeah, it does appear. All right, they basically allowed teams to play twice on Thursday nights, but yeah, they did table the flex on Thursday nights. All right, so I misspoke there.
That's okay.
But
they are. You can double check me. I think they're flexing Monday games.
Yes, they are flexing Monday night.
Do you know after what date the flexing can begin? I don't know off the top of my head.
Let me check it out real quick, and I will tell you.
That gets me into the next thing I wanted to discuss with the NFL schedule.
From week 12 to week 17.
Week 12 to week 17. Okay.
And then you have to give at least a 12-day notice.
12-day notice. Okay, that's good to know too. Yeah, because I'm curious how much of a heads up you get that you're playing a different day. And with the fans too. I know we've talked about this before, but if you're traveling late in the season and you want to see your team play on Sunday and then all of a sudden they're playing on Monday, as much head notice as possible is better for that.
Yeah.
You got to change your flight, change your hotel, and all that. So that's going to be a headache for fans, I think, but the NFL doesn't care. And
no, they don't.
But
we're just a fan. It doesn't matter what the fans want.
Well, the league is designed for the fans at home. That's who it's designed for.
Yes, that's a good point.
But not even really designed for the fans at home. It's designed to make as much money as possible, and the way they do that is the broadcasting.
Right.
And how do we get as many of these games on the network, and how many eyeballs can we get in front of these games on the networks? And the way we do that is have the best games on, and that's why it's designed for the fans at home. I appreciate that to a degree because I watch 98% of the games at home. But when I do want to travel for a game, it's going to be, a little bit tougher going forward. That maybe if I've got tickets for a great game late in the season, that game could end up being on Monday. And that's tough as a fan that wants to travel to a game, or even not even if you're traveling. If you're just buying a Falcons game and you live in Atlanta, you're planning to take your kids Sunday afternoon. All of a sudden, it's Monday night. I got to worry about getting home from work, taking the kids then, and them, staying up late on a school night. So It's totally inconvenience for the fans going to the games. But the point I wanted to make also with Monday night schedule is you got 3 double headers. And they've kind of done away with the 7 o'clock start and 10 o'clock, which I liked because you could watch both games back to back. But I guess, not enough eyeballs were on that 10 o'clock slot. So you've got a game at 7:15 and then 8:15 in week 2, same in week 3. And then later in the season, week 14, they're actually not even going to stagger them. There's just 2 games at 8:15 on that Monday.
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's, as far as you're right, it's getting eyes on the game, and that's what they're doing. And that's how it's going to be going forward. So, I like the doubleheader on Monday night, but if you can watch both games.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, you make the point, flexing the Monday night game. Even if you got 12 days notice, a lot of people are buying their tickets early and planning flights, and it's not easy to do this stuff last minute. You got to plan about a month in advance, 6 weeks in advance. If you're going to travel to see your team playing in another city, and that's a tough thing. If they're flexed on Monday night, you could be stuck with a lot of money put out, and then having to put out more money to change your flight, change your hotel. And now you gotta try and get back. It's a work night. It's a lot rougher proposition for a fan, but they talk about the fans when they want to talk about crowd noise. We got the loudest stadium in the league. Our fans are, but when it comes to making these kind of scheduling decisions, no, they don't really take the fans into consideration for this.
Yeah.
Or our fans travel, they follow us. They're going to be out and forced in this city in this game. But,
I also don't think people realize how many people travel for games, how much of the market for NFL tickets is out of town fans. I don't want to say it's a majority, but it's a good 30 to 40%, I would say. And I know that because I've done it. I've gone to these cities and I see all the other fans on the same flight as me, or I see fans coming into the airport of opposing teams, or just fans that are in town for the game as a casual fan, like I often do. Yeah. And people have season tickets and they're not in their live in, like you could have Falcons season tickets and not live in Atlanta.
Right.
I haven't heard any stories of that from Falcons fans per se, but I know stories from a lot of Steeler fans that lived in New Jersey, lived in Ohio, lived in Florida, and they travel. I was on a subway once when guy living in, we were going back to the Seattle airport, and he was a Seattle fan, but he lived in Arizona and he had season tickets, and he might sell a couple so he doesn't have to make 8 trips to Seattle, but he's making 5 or 6 during the season. And that
you finance your trips by selling a couple of games away.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. So this is much more common than I think people really realize. And it is a huge inconvenience, the flexing of the schedules for people that, I would say 30 to 40% of the fans are going to the game that are traveling in for the contest.
Right. Well, you got these older established NFL cities where people may have retired to Florida, retired to Arizona, but yeah, they're still fans of the Bears, the Jets, the Giants, Vikings, Packers, and they still get back up north for those games. They still want to be their teams.
Yeah, I got to chime in on that one. I mean, there's a Buffalo presence it's crazy in Florida. How many Buffalo Bills fans are down there? And when they play the Dolphins, you never would think that the Miami Dolphins are the Buffalo Bills rival, but they really go hard down there because so many people have retired and moved down there. It's insane. Yeah. I said, I can add value to this discussion. I'm going to just chime in my 2 cents.
No problem. Anytime, Chris.
Yeah, that's true. And at least in that case, Bills fans can say, well, I'll go to the game that's local to me. They're going to be in Miami every season.
Right.
But that's not the case in most.
But they still miss being in Buffalo for a game.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And they might say, hey, I want to go to a game with snow in December. Yeah. And I'm going to get this game now that the schedule's out. I'm sure tickets are flying off the shelves on StubHub. And you say you're a Bills fan in Florida. I want to buy tickets to this December game. And then 2 weeks before the game, you find out it's been moved to a Monday.
It's been moved.
Yeah. Or the opposite. It could be a Monday night game. You say, I wanted to go to a primetime game late in the season. And of course, we're only talking about the games that are getting flexed into Monday. Well, if you flex a game into Monday, that means a game has been flexed out of Monday. And then the fans that wanted to go to the Monday night game now have to clear their schedule for Sunday.
That's a great point, Dave. You're right. Nobody looks at it the other way. And that's a great way of looking at it because that is a problem. And it's still the same disruption for a fan.
So there'll be lots of new things with the NFL schedule really every year, but a lot of things to keep an eye on, even things that have been around for a couple years. You mentioned the 18-week schedule is still kind of new. This double headers at the same time on Monday nights kind of new. Now we throw in the extra Thursday game you could get 2 instead of 1, and then the Monday night flexing in addition to the Sunday night flexing that they also have been doing for a long time. So not as big of a deal that it's on the same day, but could still be an inconvenience for fans traveling. So a lot to dissect with the schedule every year as always. And I think we got the Falcons pretty covered there. I guess the last thing I want to mention with the international series, the Jaguars are playing back-to-back London games.
Yes, they are.
Which I really thought was interesting and I wanted to bring up on the show. Also, no Mexico game this year, 2 games in Germany. I think the Germany game went really well last year. So other than there was a turf issue, I think, got to keep an eye on that. But there's a turf issue every year in Mexico too.
Yeah,
so
there is.
That's another thing to kind of keep an eye on with these international games, other than the traveling, the turfs. But the scheduling now is another thing I want to see how it impacts. Like, will the Jaguars play better in their second game? I think they're playing the Bills in that game. Is that right? Yeah, because they play the Falcons first.
Yes, they play the Bills in that game.
Then they play the Bills in the second game,
which is going to be a home game for the Bills.
Okay.
So Jacksonville will be the road team in that game.
Which makes sense. The Jaguars wouldn't lose 2 home games, but Jaguars have an advantage having gotten used to the time zone for a week.
Huge advantage. It's going to be interesting to see how that game plays out.
Yeah.
Is he expected Jaguars to be better anyway because Trevor Lawrence actually had a productive season last year? So now you're looking for Trevor Lawrence to make his next step. And the Bills, that's going to be a rough thing for the Bills to go over there and play that game against a rested Jaguars team. The Jaguars get back into their weekly routine.
Right.
Where they don't have to travel. They can, recoup from the previous game, have 2 days of unpadded practice, a day of padded practice, and then, you're ready for your Sunday game. So it's going to be interesting to see the Jaguars do that on a regular routine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're a team that already kind of has an advantage in London games because they go over every year.
They go over a year, yeah.
They are a young team. There's not a ton of players that have been there a long time, I guess you could say, but they were there last year. So like Trevor Lawrence knows how it works, having played there the last 2 years.
Right.
So he kind of knows what to expect and has already been to that city and isn't going to be sightseeing the week that he's in London because that he plays the Falcons. Whereas maybe Desmond Ridder does some sightseeing. Not saying that he shouldn't because he's in London, great city. If he's never been there before, I don't know if he has or not, then maybe it's just an advantage. It's just an advantage that the Jaguars go every year, and then they're going to have an extra advantage against the Bills because they were there the week before as well.
Exactly. So, and that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, you get caught up in the sights, you get caught up in a different city, someplace you're not used to going, European city. It can have an effect. So, we'll see how the Falcons and how they adjust to this too.
We got about 10 minutes left in the show, a little bit less than that. I just wanted to get to a couple notes from the Falcons minicamp to end today, rookie minicamp, which started yesterday. And there's really actually one thing that I want to touch on. And if anything else, if you guys commenting want to talk about, we could try and get to here in the last couple minutes. But the big takeaway, of course, is always what the first round pick is doing. And Bijan Robinson on the first day of practice was lining up everywhere, according to ESPN's Harry Lyles Jr., talking about him at receiver, at running back, getting reps in at both of those positions, getting reps in as a blocker, doing everything on offense. And that's what we talked about him doing when after the Falcons picked him. We talked about it last week as well. So, I would say 2 thumbs up really after just one practice. I know you can't get too carried away with one day, but Robinson is everything we talked about his potential doing in the early going at practice.
He's a worker, and everything I've read so far, he's really throwing himself into this NFL stage of his career. And he's really working hard. He's saying all the right things, as far as what he's willing to do on the field and what he's willing to do in this offense. And you got to like it. He's ready. He wants to be a force in this Falcons offense. And I'm all for it. I like the fact that you knew coming out of Texas, that's what this guy was going to be about.
Yeah.
He's about doing what he needs to do and being there. So I'm excited by him. I still wish the Falcons had taken an edge rusher, but
yeah, of course you had to get that in there.
Of course. What do you expect from me, Dave? You can make book on most of this stuff that's going to happen every week, and you're probably going to be right on 95% of it.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't disagree. I'm trying to move on and accept that they didn't take an edge rusher, and analyzing who they did take. He's looking good so far. Yeah,
he is. I like him. I figured he was going to be a positive influence on this team coming out of college. Yeah. And he's going right into rookie training camp being that positive influence. You can't ask for anything else from your first-round draft pick.
Lyles reported that Robinson has spoken to Tyler Algier over FaceTime. He's looking forward to also working with Cordero Patterson. So he's not coming in and expecting to yes, he's expecting to be productive, but he knows that there was already production in that backfield.
Right.
And that he has got to carve out a role with the other 2 guys and work together with them. And that's a positive too, that he wants to work with them and not just replace them.
Yeah. Exactly. As I say, he's saying the right things. As far as I'm a part of this team, I'm not the focus. I'm not going to be the focus of this offense going forward. He knows that he's got to fit in with these guys, and he's going to do that. And I like that. Algier, it's going to be rough on Algier. But I know a lot of people say, well, you didn't need Robinson because he had Tyler Algier, ran for over 1,000 yards last year. But Algier has no breakaway speed. Robinson can make a difference because he has that breakaway speed. If he gets past into the second level, it's going to be dangerous. Algier, not so much. Algier's a tank. He will run over you. I expect to see Algier in third down situations and goal line situations. That guy's a tank. He's going to score touchdowns for it.
Sure.
Is that me or is that you? That's me. That's what I get. But it's got taken off my train of thought there for a second. But would you say Algier might be a good fantasy back this year because of the way the Falcons are going to use him?
Well, I think him and Robinson would be good. Robinson's going to get a lot of touches. I think he's going to get a lot of passing opportunities, targets in the passing game. Which would be great in PPR leagues. And the potential for Algier to score probably offsets any worry you have about Algier not getting as many touches, because overall this offense is going to be better than last year, I think, scoring more. And you want guys that are in offenses that are going to score, because those touchdowns make a huge difference in fantasy, those 6 points. So absolutely, I think they're both going to be fantasy relevant.
Right. So,
I should say, definitely fantasy relevant. Patterson's going to be fantasy relevant too, but I think they're both guys that you could enter the season, depending on the size of your league, as potential starters.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. He may not give you the yards this year. He's not going to run for 1,000 yards again.
Yeah.
But what he's going to do is he's going to give you that guy that, again, on the goal line, inside the 5, trying to get first downs. He's just tough to stop. He's a tank. Ran 4.7 yards per attempt last year. So, he's very productive when he's got a smash between tackles. He's not this 3-yard per carry average type of guy. He will get you 4 to 5 yards and give you a good start on your next series of downs. So, again, just going to be very exciting to watch that and see how he progresses.
I want to get in this last comment from Pantera. Falcons are at home for a month from preseason game 2 through week 2 of the regular season. So Atlanta has 4 straight home games. If you count the preseason, they should be fresher than other teams come game 3. Pantera making a point that we didn't bring up, the preseason schedule. Yeah, the Falcons are on the road for game 1, and those dates and times have not been announced yet, so we don't know when those games will take place. But the new setup with only 3 preseason games a year, if you have if you have more road games during the regular season, you have more home games in the preseason, for what that's worth. And I guess really what Pantera is arguing, it's worth it for less traveling early in the year. And they'll travel to Miami in preseason week 1 and then have 2 home games against AFC North opponents to round out the preseason. And yeah, that's true. So for a whole month, the Falcons won't have to get on a plane. And maybe that will be an advantage. And hopefully it is, because they'll be on a plane a lot. Maybe not logging a ton of miles except to London, but not playing a lot at home after week 2 in the regular season.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. So hopefully that does upset it a little bit, because they do have a tough stretch between week 7, week 10 before their bye week, where, they are going to be doing quite a bit of traveling. So it is going to wear a little bit. So hopefully that does help. Good point, Pantera.
And again, maybe the length of the flights will help too. Short flight to Tampa, short flight to Nashville.
Right.
could drive to Nashville if you wanted to. So
yeah, exactly.
The London one obviously would be much better. That was in Florida as well for Atlanta's travel plans, but some of these trips we're talking about them making not super long trips, not
right.
Only one to Europe and one cross country the whole season.
Exactly. So you got to like that. It sets up nice for the Falcons, and I think sets up to give them a great possibility of breaking that 8.5 win ceiling that everybody's putting on this team for this year.
If you're interested in more entries other than the total win total for the Falcons, check out Prize Picks. They're our sponsor, and when you sign up after downloading the app, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. You benefit by getting some free money using our promo code, and you support the show. So that's a great way if you're trying to find some other way to support us other than watching and commenting. Signing up for Prize Picks is the number one way to support us. So do
Absolutely.
that and use that promo code ASU. Thank you for tuning in. Follow us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb.
Yep. Everybody have a great week.